Hey folks, welcome back to History and Politics Chat on Tuesday afternoons at 4 o'clock, where I try and take your questions about modern day politics and provide some answers that are grounded in history. My name is Heather Cox Richardson, and I am a professor of history, but I do not speak for my employer when I do these videos. Okay, so there we go. Today, you had a lot of questions, and I cannot answer them all because there simply isn't enough time. But what I decided to do today was, again, as usual, to group a bunch of them, but then also just to take a bunch that I could answer quickly that I thought you would be interested in that showed up again and again. All right, so let me start here with the question that many people asked. So I have questions here from Samantha Walker, from Barbara Berger, from Lori Potter. And I'm going to go into another question as well about the Republican Party. And let me start here with another set of questions that came up. And that is the question of, is it unusual for the Republican Party not to have a platform? What's going on with that? And that's a question that came up from Christina Masia and Tam St. Clair. Why isn't there a party platform with the Republican Party this year? Okay, so here's the answer to that. This is unprecedented. The idea of not having a party platform is unprecedented. So one of the things that's happened really in the 20th century, although it's got roots in the 19th, is the emergence of the naming of a president as being the central issue for a party. In the 19th century, certainly people were jockeying to become president or to back some character who was going to be president. But the real question was, what was the party platform going to look like? And the platform of a party is literally they're called planks because they built the platform on which a candidate stood. And so the planks in that platform are put together by the people who are part of the party. So what the platform does is it says a lot about who the party is at that particular moment. So in my case, for example, I study political parties, and literally the first place I go when I want to study the change in a party is to the platform. Now, the platform is not necessarily something the party is ever going to be able to make happen. By the way, I'm looking at the sky. There is this storm coming through. If it hits and I lose power, don't wait for me to come back, because I live in the woods and the chances are pretty good that if I lose power from what looks like a pretty serious storm, I won't be back up for hours, and we're just going to have to pick this up next week. Okay, so there we go. It's getting quite dark out. So they're not necessarily going to be able to put the things in that platform in place. And really dramatically here, I would point, for example, to the fact that in the early 20th century, the Republican Party continually put an anti-lynching platform, plank in their platform, but they never really intended to make that happen. They were signaling to a certain part of the party. So what the platform does is it gives you a snapshot of who holds the reins in a political party at a certain moment, at the moment of a presidential campaign. So we get really important things in a platform. For example, when the Republican Party organizes during a time of xenophobia in the 1850s, that is, people don't like immigrants, the Republicans in 1856, in their first national party platform, and again in 1860, put a plank in their platform that says, "We believe in immigration." This is a huge deal for a new party to say, yeah, we're going to take a stand on this. Even though everybody is turning against immigrants, we're going to say we like immigrants. So when you're trying to understand the Republicans in the 1850s and the 1860s and on into the 1870s, you have to understand that they come from a position of saying, we like immigrants. So then the next question is like, why? And that's what gets you into what a party believes. So the platform was always the central part of a political campaign or of a political convention. Like, you got all these guys, and in the 19th and until very recently, they were all guys. You get all these people coming together, and they struggle about what they're going to agree on in the platform committee. They literally have a committee where they talk about this and they hash it out. And then some stuff gets accepted and some stuff doesn't. And what they can agree on becomes the platform for the party. Now, that was really the most important part of a convention for a long time, because once you had that platform established, who stood on it was really sort of a question of who could appeal to voters. But the person who stood on that platform was committed to it, with one really notable exception, and that was the Democrats in 1860. 8 when the guy who's put on the platform doesn't really believe in it, and similarly in 1864 the Democrats have an anti have a platform saying that the Northern Democrats that they are going to compromise with the South, while they put George McClellan, a Democratic Civil War general, on the ticket, and he goes out and he disavows the platform. That's really unusual. But the platform is really why we have a convention. Now, after Eisenhower in '52, when we started using conventions as a much more active, media-driven event, the nomination of a president becomes really key to kind of whipping up enthusiasm for that ticket. But it's really about the platform. So what one does when one studies politics is that, as I say, you look at the platform. So when the Republican Party in 2016 turned out their platform, weirdly enough, I happened to be doing an interview with the BBC that night, and they wanted to talk about all kinds of stuff. And I kept saying, no, look at this platform. Because on the platform, if you read it, and most people don't nowadays because they don't realize what a big deal it is. If you read that platform, it was straight movement conservatism. They were taking the country back to 2020. And I remember wandering around like a duck that had been hit on the head going, they are erasing the entire period. That's the lightning, by the way, and the thunder, which is really close to this house. They were really erasing the country right back to before the New Deal, to the 1920s and the early 1930s. And I kept being like, read this, people, read this, because you don't know what you're getting into. Like, Donald Trump is talking about making things fairer. You probably don't remember that, but he was. And talking about universal health care. He's talking about all this stuff. But the reality is his platform says he's going to do just the opposite, which is, of course, what he went ahead and did. And similarly, there was a plank in that 2016 platform that changed the Republican stance on Russia. And that was the other thing that people like me were all over. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on with this? This is a really big deal. So now we're at the present, and the Republican Party has chosen not to have a political platform. What that says is all they stand for is Donald Trump. But, and this is why I wanted to lead with this when I went back to the Republican Party and their future. But as I wrote the other night, what's really interesting about the statement, what they did is instead of releasing a platform, they released a series of resolutions, which is a slightly different thing, but it basically is a declaration as opposed to something that's been sort of voted on. There's a there's a term of use difference between the two, but they issued these resolutions. And as I mentioned the other night, the first resolution said, there's 4 resolutions, and there's the one saying we're just behind Trump and America first. And then there's one that says, we call on the media not to misrepresent the fact that we're all behind Donald Trump, that the RNC is 100% behind Donald Trump. Well, why did they put that in there? Well, they put that in there because, of course, the Republicans are not united behind Donald Trump. And they're trying to say that it's fake news when Republicans break away from Trump. And they wanted to hit that, probably for Trump's eyes, in their resolutions. And so that right there says they're saying they're all Trump all the time. But the reality is they have a serious group that are not behind Trump. And then there was another piece of that other resolution that said, we resolve that you can't make a motion to revise this set of resolutions, and that you can't ask for a new platform. Well, if you had any confidence in your caucus, you wouldn't need to do that. So what were they worried about? They were worried about the fact that the Republican Party is terribly, terribly split. And it's not split probably in the way a lot of you are thinking about. It's split 3 ways, not 2 ways. So you got the Trumpers, and they're the ones who he is consolidating power in the executive branch and also in the judiciary, where people are just pro-Donald Trump. And so there's the Trumpers. But then you have to their right, if you will, and somebody asked a question about right and left, and I will explain that too. But so let's say to their right, although it's a little bit of a misnomer. To their right, you have people like the 4-letter people, Rand Paul, But he's not the only one. Ted Cruz is another one. They all have 4 letters in their names, which to me, since I see words in pictures, they kind of are all interchangeable, even though they're different states, different people, different names. It's the number of letters that do me in. Anyway, they are dead set against what the Trumpers are doing now. What the Trumpers are doing is they're throwing federal money to try at constituencies to try and shore up voters for Trump. So, for example, we're making huge payments to the agricultural sector to overcome the tariffs. We're throwing money into roads and bridges, depending on different states that look like they might be going Democratic in this election. Trump and Elaine Chao at the Treasury at the Department of Transportation are throwing money at those states to try and get them to vote for Trump. And they're basically walking away from the principles that Ted Cruz and those guys like, the idea that the government's not going to do anything to support to do anything other than support big business and religion, that it's not going to regulate business, it's not going to provide a basic social safety net, it's not going to promote infrastructure, almost a libertarian view, if you will. And any time that the Trumpers look like they're going to do something, that group on the right says we're not on board. That's why McConnell could not get a coronavirus bill through the Senate. Not because the Democrats. This was in the Republicans' own conference where people like Ted Cruz said, no, we're not going to vote for any money because you shouldn't do this. The government shouldn't give any money to anybody despite the coronavirus. Okay, so there's that problem in the Republican caucus. And then on the other side, there's the group of people in the Republican caucus, and these are the people really that the platform the resolution was aiming at, who don't like Trump. And they would like to go ahead and actually have principles that Trump doesn't embrace. So, for example, they are interested in a different kind of trade vision. They're much more free trade than he is. They're interested in a different Republican vision than he is. So that the RNC, the Republican National Committee, did not want to have any kind of a discussion within the Republican Party about what they stand for, because they don't stand for anything right now, except many of them can unite around the idea of Trump. Where's the problem with that? The problem with that is, of course, it overturns our entire history of having a platform, but it also says we will follow this man no matter what he does. And that is not democracy. That is authoritarianism, where a country adheres to one great leader. And in Western history, and remember, I'm an Americanist, so I can't talk to any country really about America, but I'm also an Americanist to the degree that I can tell you a little bit about England and France and some of the Western countries. I am useless on Asia